the subject of my visit, as Jasper said, apprenticeships. When the Liberal Democrats entered into coalition half a decade ago, and we had to introduce all those gory, difficult, unpopular savings and cuts to start, saving the economy, pulling it back from the brink and balancing the books, there were some areas of public spending which we said, no, that is just, we really do need to spend more, not cut back and spend less. And one of those areas was apprenticeships. And we have now more than doubled the number of apprenticeships available across the country during the last 5 years. There are now 2 million more people who've taken up apprenticeships over the last 5 years. It's the biggest expansion of apprenticeships in generations, possibly since the last war. Now, you might ask why, given all the demands on scarce public finances and all the rest of it, why did I decide, why did Jasper, why did Vince Cable, why did all of those who worked on this, why did we decide to give such priority to apprenticeships? Well, the answer is very simple. For a long, long time, I'm not sure if you agree with me on this, but for a long time, I think we had a sort of, well, candidly, it was a sort of barely concealed snobbery in our country that somehow an academic qualification is always better than a vocational one. Having your nose in a book in a university library for 3 or 4 years, a great thing to do if you want to do it, is always better than literally or metaphorically getting your hands dirty and learning by doing. And that is something which I think has always held us back. Because there are lots and lots of bright people, many of you might be here and put yourself in that category, who just don't feel that you want to take up an academic route, but you want to earn and learn. You want to learn from this very ancient idea. I mean, apprenticeships is a very sort of ancient idea that you learn by kind of following the example of someone who has more experience than you, that you earn while learning at the same time. And I think if we can put vocational education and apprenticeships on the same pedestal as we traditionally have placed academic qualifications, and by the way, they do this in other countries. If you go to Germany or Denmark or Sweden, this idea of this kind of snobbery that somehow says vocational qualifications are a poor cousin to academic qualifications would be completely incomprehensible to them. So I think we're finally starting to turn a page on generations of slightly snobby attitudes towards vocational qualifications, and that's why I'm so pleased we've doubled the number of apprenticeships. That's why I'm so grateful to all of you, everybody working here in the college, for making apprenticeships available to particularly youngsters locally, and why the Liberal Democrats want to double the number of businesses offering apprenticeships in the next Parliament, because those employers amongst you will know better than I do that we could have many, many more employers taking up apprenticeships if only they knew how easy it was to do so hand in glove with colleges. I meet particularly a lot of smaller employers who don't have great big HR departments, who kind of worry about the paperwork, worry it's going to be a lot of hassle. But in fact, colleges like this take away a lot of the hassle from employers and make it a very easy thing to do. So that's the ambition. That's the reason I'm here. That's the reason I'm particularly delighted to be supporting Jasper. I notice he's got magnificent cufflinks with J&G, so we can't forget, possibly, you can't forget who you are, or indeed no one else will forget who you are either. Over to you. Who wants to ask any questions or make any observations about anything that... Yeah.
What's your views on the national...
Do you want to... No, it's all right.
What's your views on the national apprenticeship wage?
So it needs to go up. It has been, as you know, much lower than the headline minimum wage. I think the reason there's a difference between apprenticeship minimum wage and the kind of normal minimum wage. I mean, I think that's probably right, because you can't expect employers to, pay someone who is learning and gaining a qualification just as if they'd already got that qualification. But I think it needs to be increased dramatically. And we announced, just the government, that is, the coalition government, just 3 weeks ago. It was one of the last announcements I made as Deputy Prime Minister before we all went on the campaign trail, was by far the biggest increase in the minimum wage, the apprenticeship minimum wage, actually in excess of what was recommended by the... there's a body called the Low Pay Commission, and they're a bunch of pointy-headed, clever folk, and they get out their calculators and they work out where they think the minimum wage should be set, so that it doesn't increase in a way which, that it increases, but doesn't increase in a way which discourages employment, because that would be an own goal. And in fact, they didn't want us to set it as high as we have done, but we have set it much higher. Thankfully, the vast majority of employers pay well above the apprenticeship minimum wage anyway, and though it's not my job to tell an employer how to pay their apprenticeships. I think on the whole, if employers can do that, that's a good thing. Yeah, shall I just take this young man first?
You mentioned...
Do you want to take... is this working, or am I just holding it for decoration? I don't think it serves any purpose. It's a wand. Here you go.
You mentioned about smaller companies being unaware of how easy it is to take on an apprentice, but how do you intend to go about making those small companies aware of how easy it is to take on one?
Well, that's a good point. Well, maybe someone from a smaller company could tell. I mean, I think one of the best things you can do is by colleges sort of getting out in the local community and explaining to the Federation of Small Businesses, to the chambers, to local employers, just getting the word out that it's actually a very, very straightforward thing. As I'm sure some of the local employers here will find out, the sifting of the candidates is done by the college, a lot of the paperwork's taken off their hands by the college, and it's a really, really rewarding thing for employers. And, it's good for the bottom line. It's not a burden on small employers. It massively helps them boost their own...